Belgium is a country many people associate with chocolate, Brussels, and quiet European streets, not with one of the most surprising and layered Muslim stories in Europe. Yet if you follow the story closely, you find that Islam in Belgium is not just a recent chapter written by migration, but a deeper story that stretches across war, labor, law, and personal transformation, a story that lived quietly in the background for decades before it became visible in everyday life. And that is what makes Belgium so interesting, because its Muslim story did not begin in one single moment, and it certainly did not begin only with guest workers in the 1960s. It began much earlier, in places people rarely connect to Belgium at all, and it still continues today in homes, study circles, and individual journeys of faith that are quietly reshaping what Islam means in the heart of Europe. So how did this happen? And why does Belgium's story reveal so much about Europe's changing identity? Before Belgium had a visible Muslim community, it already had Muslim lives, Muslim sacrifice, and Muslim presence woven into its history in ways most people never hear about. And that forgotten beginning matters because it changes the entire way we understand Islam in Belgium today. The popular version of the story says Islam arrived in Belgium with the labor migration of 1960s. But that is only the most visible part of the story, not the beginning of it, because the first recorded Muslim presence in the country goes back to 1829, years before Belgium even officially became a nation, showing that the Muslim story here is older than most people assume. But the first truly major Muslim presence in Belgium came during World War I, when soldiers from across the Muslim world were brought into the conflict that tore through Europe, including men from British India and French North Africa who fought on the Western Front and left behind a legacy that has been largely forgotten by the wider public. Their story is not just part of military history, it is part of Belgium's hidden memory. One of the most powerful names from that period is Khadad Khan, a Muslim soldier in the British Indian Army who became the first South Asian and Muslim recipient of the Victoria Cross for his bravery near Hollebeek in Belgium in 1914, where he helped hold back a German advance at enormous personal risk. His story is not just a military fact. It is a reminder that Muslim history in Belgium was shaped from the very beginning by sacrifice, not only migration. Across the Belgian countryside, you can still find graves of these soldiers, some facing Mecca, silent markers of a history that is both deeply human and strangely absent from most mainstream narratives. For many viewers, this is the kind of fact that changes everything, because it reveals that Islam was never only new in Belgium. After the war, the story took a different turn. In the 1920s and 1930s, small groups of North African men came to work in Belgium's coal mines, laying the first civilian foundations of a Muslim community that was still small, but no longer temporary. They came for work, but their presence became part of a much larger social transformation. Then came the real demographic shift after World War II. In 1964, Belgium signed labor agreements with Morocco and Turkey, and later with Tunisia and Algeria, bringing in thousands of workers to fill the labor shortages that powered the country's industrial growth. These men were expected to stay for only a short time, earn money, and then return home. But history rarely follows the original plan. In 1974, the oil crisis forced Belgium to slow and then stop foreign labor recruitment. And by that point, many of those workers had already built lives, found work, and started families, which meant that instead of leaving, many began bringing their wives and children to Belgium, turning what had started as a temporary labor system into permanent communities. That change was also reflected in the country's institutions. In 1974, Belgium officially recognized Islam as a subsidized religion, placing it alongside other major faiths and giving the state a role in supporting Islamic religious life, including mosque administration, imam salaries, and religious education in public schools. Later, in 1996, the Muslim Executive of Belgium was established as an official link between the Muslim community and the state, helping organize that relationship in a more structured way. Because Belgium does not collect official religion statistics, there is no exact national count, but estimates generally place the Muslim population somewhere between 6% and 8%, depending on the source and the year, which means Islam is now firmly part of the Belgian landscape, even if the country does not track it in the same way some others do. And yet, even that is not the whole story, because the Muslim story in Belgium today is no longer only about migration and settlement. It is also about the personal journeys of people who were born in Belgium and still found their way to Islam on their own. That is where the story becomes more intimate and more powerful. What makes Belgium especially interesting today is that its Muslim story is no longer only about communities arriving from abroad. It is also about individual Belgians who are choosing Islam for deeply personal reasons. This is where history turns into something human. This is where the story becomes more intimate, because beyond the history of soldiers, workers, and institutions, there are now stories of native Belgians who are discovering Islam through travel, friendships, reflection, and a search for meaning. For some, it begins as curiosity. For others, it begins as a question they can no longer ignore. One example is Michael Ruppert, a Dutch-Belgian traveler who spent years exploring different countries and cultures, and during that journey found himself living with Muslim families, seeing how they prayed, how they lived, and how they understood the world, which made him curious in a way that was not forced and not theatrical, but deeply personal. He began asking real questions. What did the Quran say? Why do these families live with such discipline and confidence? What was happening inside a mosque that he had never understood before? Those questions did not disappear. They deepened. That curiosity led him to study Islam seriously, and over time, his questions turned into conviction, until he eventually embraced Islam himself, later sharing his journey publicly and using his platform not only to speak about his own path, but also to support charity and encourage others to think more carefully about faith, purpose, and the meaning of life. That is what makes a story like this resonate, because it is not just about conversion, it is about a person finding clarity. Then there is Veronique Koels, whose story shows another side of this same change. She converted to Islam at a young age after being influenced by Muslim friends and by her own desire to understand the faith beyond stereotypes. And instead of keeping that journey private, she turned into something practical and public by creating an Islamic study center in her home, a place where people, especially women, could come, ask questions, and learn directly rather than relying on rumor or misinformation. Her center eventually grew to over 1,000 members, which is remarkable not because it proves some mass conversion wave, but because it shows how one person's conviction can create a space where many others begin their own personal journeys. That is the important part here. These are not mass statistics. They are not slogans. They are individual stories, and in Belgium, they matter because they challenge the simple idea that Islam is only something brought from outside. For some Belgians, Islam is becoming something discovered from within. The deeper story is not only about who arrived in Belgium, but about how people began to live, adapt, and belong. That is where the quiet transformation becomes visible, as Muslim communities settled more deeply into Belgian life. They became part of the everyday rhythm of the country. Families built homes, children grew up speaking local languages, and communities formed around mosques, study circles, cultural centers, and ordinary neighborhoods. What was once seen as temporary slowly became part of the social fabric. For some families, Islam became part of a new Belgian identity, not in opposition to the country, but within it. People attended school, worked, married, raised children, and built relationships across cultural lines. The story was no longer only about origin, but about belonging. This is also why Belgium matters so much in the wider European conversation. It shows that religion does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through family life, neighborhood life, and personal conviction. And sometimes the biggest change is the one that happens without anyone noticing at first. That quiet change is what makes Belgium such a powerful case. It is not just about numbers. It is about how identity can shift over time, how a society can carry multiple histories at once, and how faith can move from the margins into the center of everyday life. When you step back, Belgium's Muslim story is not one story at all. It is a chain of different moments that stretch from forgotten soldiers to labor migration, from legal recognition to personal conviction. And the more closely you look, the more layered it becomes. The story of Islam in Belgium is built from layers. It begins with early traces that most people never hear about, grows through the sacrifice of Muslim soldiers in World War I, expands through coal mines and labor agreements, and then takes on a deeper legal and social shape through recognition by the state. And now, alongside that history, there is something more personal happening. Quiet journeys of Belgians who are finding Islam not through family inheritance, but through curiosity, study, and faith. That is what makes Belgium such a powerful case. It shows that cultures and religions are not fixed in place. They move, they settle, they mix, and sometimes they surprise us in the most unexpected ways. What once seemed distant can become familiar. What once seemed forgotten can return with new meaning. From the battlefields of Ypres to a home turned into a study center, Belgium's Muslim story is still being written, and the next chapter may be shaped not only by migration or policy, but by individual people searching for truth. If this story gave you a new way to see Belgium, then you're in the right place. This is Islam's Light, where we uncover hidden history, real journeys, and the growing story of Islam around the world. If you enjoyed this video, take a moment to like it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next story. And before you go, leave a comment and tell us this. Do you think Belgium's story is more about history or more about the personal journeys happening today? Your answer might help someone else see this story more clearly.